Hello team, welcome back to another Line War cast. Here's your map today. It's some trade routes on the left. There's a trade route in the north as well, connected to those southernmost trade routes. And the two players today are Notorious Nubs, who is in blue, and Dark Templar, who is in red. Both players are trying to pick this central mountain range with some decent gas. It makes a lot of sense. It's a great starting position. Nubs is starting in blue here, and of course Dark Templar in the north in a line. Neither player will know where the other one is as of yet. There's no way there's the vision. We can see what Dark Templar can see. Same thing for Nubs. So Nubs is going for 3 factory airport to start off with. It's actually 3 tank and an airport. It'll be interesting to see what sort of aircraft come out of this airport. Once Nubs gets this gas, they're definitely taking that immediately. And I love what Dark Templar is doing. It's going 5 barracks with 1 factory, and all the barracks are making commandos right now. So it's actually a very interesting spot for Dark Templar to go. This could get a little bit ugly if these are like helicopters or even some amount of planes for blue show up, because they're going to be able to hit all these buildings unless Dark Templar goes for SAMs right away out of the factory, which would be, I mean, could happen. Let's see what the plan is. Tanks here for Nubs is great because there's a lot of open field, and tanks are great in open field. Nubs has the first gas right on top of the base. The second gas will become important. I mean, all these units that blue is making are just gas units. But it looks like in the south here, southwest, there's at least 1 other gas. As the first 3 tanks finish for blue, 3 more tanks on the way, and a gas. And that was sort of, that's like very good timing, because those 3 tanks went down, and the second they did, the gas was built. Sometimes you want to delay the gas. If you build the gas too early, then some of these tanks won't be able to build because they're like relatively expensive units. So that was great. 6 tanks are almost done, and the first helicopter is well on its way for Nubs. Dark Templar can see now where Nubs is. I don't think Nubs can actually see the same. Yeah, so Dark Templar's got a little bit of warning as to where Nubs is. Nubs will find out in a second that red is a little off to the east. Barracks in the north for Dark Templar. I like this to be able to cap quicker. Barracks units are some of the best capping units. I mean, tanks are pretty good, but like for the cost, I mean, tanks are pretty prohibitive, like expense-wise. More commandos from red and SAMs actually. So this is great. I mean, if Dark Templar gets a handful of SAMs, and they'll be able to deal with the helicopters that are going to show up from blue. Nubs can see that commando, that 3 infantry is enough. The 3 tanks are now going to the production for red. I mean, the Nubs must just know that this is the most realistic spot for the production to be. First gas is just finishing, so that's great news for Nubs, who's transitioning to artillery. So it'll be pretty much the perfect number of tanks for 1 gas, but with helicopters, Nubs might need another gas pretty quick. These tanks in the mountain are going to be super slow. Tanks move very slowly through mountains. You can see on the tooltip, pardon me. At least for now, they're in blue's territory, so they won't take as much of a penalty. 3 flanking tanks against as many commandos to defend. If the tanks run out of gas, this will be really good for the commandos. Maybe not really good. I mean, commandos are still going to have a relatively tough time in equal numbers against tanks. But certainly it's kind of pinning the tanks here, because if the tanks were to try to get on the production, they're going to run out of gas. With this helicopter working, these 3 tanks trying to move through the mountains as well. It's a lot of gas for Nubs to be running right now. Nubs is making their way on the bottom left of the map, and there's a lot in the north for Templar. It'll be interesting to see who has the eco advantage. I think it'll be probably in Nubs' favor even, potentially. This is good defense from Dark Templar. This is a great number of infantry to be here to body block. The SAM hopefully doesn't just run out into this mountain range and gets these snipes, because it's important that Dark Templar keep as many of the SAMs alive. Yeah, they're just moving into the mountain, which is great. Dark Templar has 452 economy. Nubs with 428. Which, because of all the barracks, it does make sense that Dark Templar would be getting more economy over time, especially like in this north. I mean, the one barracks that's constantly pushing out units to cap is so good. Really, red just needs to defend very, very hard here. There's 4 artillery pieces on its way. That's going to be very difficult for red to deal with. If Dark Templar made... If some of these artillery were maybe in a defensive line at the base of the mountain, they'd be able to fire this entire time. It's a lot of infantry, 5 at a time. I like that Dark Templars switch to only making infantry. I think the number of units here is important. 2 infantry in the top snipe, 1 tank from Nubs, but it's going to be this frontal push that's the big deal for red to defend. When it's just clumps of units like this, commandos aren't as good. It's all about the number of things you can get, and infantry build twice as quick as commandos. So it's a smart play. And over time, red is going to get more and more economy because they're investing in this top. There's another barracks, in fact, which is relatively greedy. Red's really using this mountain as like such an advantage to defend here because Nubs isn't getting good trades in this little like valley. The tanks don't move quick. They're not running around units. The artillery's finally showed up. The question will be whether red has enough to just attack this artillery, because undefended artillery is pretty weak. Nubs is going for 2 more barracks, which I like as the play. It's kind of tough for Nubs right now because there's no way they can send helicopters into this location. There's just, with 2 SAMs and potentially a 3rd one on the way, it wouldn't be super great. Dark Templar is doing what we're saying, which is just rushing these artillery. The thing that might change the outcome here is the fact that some of these infantry have to run through mountains, and they will go slower through the mountains, so it took them longer to get on top of their artillery. I mean, the artillery is still trading relatively well because of this. More artillery is coming to reinforce, and if some of these artillery pieces don't go down, then blue might just have an unstoppable blob. Interceptors and helicopters are doing exactly what they need to be for Nubs, which is fighting in these open fields and helping like stop red from capping so much. It is a lot of artillery though. 3 artillery pieces on the way for Dark Templar. The buildings are kind of messing with red's ability to get to the front lines. And income-wise, 596 for Dark Templar and 512 for Nubs, who's actually doing better on eco than I would have thought. Another barracks in the north for Dark Templar, which really pays off as long as this is held, which it's looking like it's going to be. As long as Dark Templar doesn't then push too far into Nubs' mountain range, this is a hold. 2 SAMs can still deal with 3 helicopters, or at least trade a little bit better. This is probably what will throw this balance out again. I appreciate that red's trying to push. I'm not sure if it is the play. Let's see how many pieces of artillery Templar can see. So they can see all the artillery. It's 3 factories versus 1 factory of production. So in theory, there's no way that red should be able to just push through all of these units for blue, because it's 3 times as many factories. The infantry is helping out. If the helicopters can trade with these artillery pieces, because they're going to be able to before the SAMs get there, that'll be very good for blue as well. The rest of the field is kind of just open skirmishes. It's a great scout from the interceptor. Interceptor is going to go down though with the final hit. And I'm actually kind of surprised that red can keep pushing here. I guess it's really just the amount of infantry. These tanks are great, and what they're also great for is that now a new wave of infantry for red, and artillery for that matter, can't be pushed towards the front. Although what's great for Dark Templar is that they've already won the front here. This is now, the momentum is definitely on their side. If these tanks can kill the factory, that would be huge. I don't think they're going to be able to though. And with 3 barracks in the north for Dark Templar, and 2 in the south, I mean, Dark Templar is just gonna get such an eco lead in a second. 692 for red and 572 for Nubs. Nubs is doing exactly what's needed, which is to like back off and dig in, maybe even closer to home, because this is so many infantry now. It's tough because with some artillery pieces, like Nubs can't actually even see that this push is still going on and how many units there are. If Nubs could see all of this, I suspect they would back up. Tanks through the mountains are going to be tough since they're not moving as quick. I wonder if the tanks just went out and tried to cap the field. I'm not sure if that would even help. Just a really great starting location from red. Nubs has the gas necessary. And maybe even digging in is what blue needs to do. But it's a tough call because over time, because there's more barracks on the map, red's gonna expand quicker, like we've been saying. So Nubs almost has to do damage. There's only 2 SAMs, so if Nubs can get a few more strikers and helicopters, maybe they could go and kill the SAMs and then start picking away at all these units. The tanks, unfortunately, are also fighting artillery in the mountains. So those are tough trades. This is a great dig-in from Nubs. This will be a huge problem because there's enough commandos from Dark Templar that sniping this gas is very likely, and the red's going to be able to pick off all this because if you look at Nubs' vision, not all those commandos are seen because of the stealth bonus that commandos have. So this will be a very tough place for Nubs to be fighting. The interceptors and helicopters potentially will have to get down there. 632 income for Nubs and 836 for Dark Templar. Who now has commanding momentum, like pretty much the whole map, even in the south. And there's only 2 barracks for Nubs, so fighting this off is going to be very difficult. 2 barracks in the south for Dark Templar are already established. Dark Templar is going around this defensive line, which is definitely the smart play. It's the patient play. This is a perfect grouping of commandos, and these infantry are not going to be able to deal with them. This would be a very frustrating game, I think, if you are Nubs, because there's a great moment there where this whole thing was at risk. But Dark Templar defended well. The geography of the map, line war, and its wonderful geography, the way that mountains and forests all have different bonuses. It really screwed over the tanks. Because at this point it'll just be a slow push, I think. Dark Templar's thrown down 2 more factories. The 1 factory did get taken out by the tanks. So it's going to be 3 factory. Nubs has 4 factories, but not nearly as many infantry. Losing territory in the bottom right. And about to start losing territory in the bottom left. The barracks on the refinery is great to help with that. 944 for Dark Templar, 632 for Nubs, income-wise. That's a factory in the north for Dark Templar. I like that play. And this is really the part of the map that super matters, because that's a lot of economy that's changing hands. Like all these territories, Dark Templar is taking away from Nubs, so Nubs also loses the economy. And it's not just Dark Templar gaining economy, but they're taking away from their opponent, which is so big. It's good response from Nubs to defend here. The commandos will just skirt the outside, and they're going to get super slippery. It's going to be hard for Nubs to track down all those units. This is going to be a super headache. Unless Nubs just takes this fight and wins the battle. I was expecting those 3 red commandos just roll through this and get on top of the airport. It's a good amount of artillery, but there's no infantry to stop like to body block. Because all these infantry might just run on these artillery pieces. Which will not be good for blue. But off of 2 barracks, that's kind of expected. There's no way that Nubs could have the number of infantry needed. The artillery that are in the mountain here along this line might be okay because the infantry moves so much slower through this mountain. But the ones on the low ground certainly are going to be in trouble, especially with the help from Red's artillery. 2 tanks are reinforced in the left flank, but that's not really going to be enough. They're going to be able to pull a bunch of infantry over to them instead of going to the artillery, but Red already has enough to power through. It's great defense. Helicopters here are fantastic for Nubs because they can stay over there. They don't have to return to base every time. And Nubs going for another reach round attack. Which in theory, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, in hindsight, I wonder what the success rate of these tanks just running up into this field and trying to pick off barracks and cap, as opposed to trying to jump on the production. But in some sense, it makes a lot of sense because Nubs has to stop this push and at least start applying some pressure. Like when the tanks do this, all of these units, instead of being here because they were moving forward, they're still at the base. So for the next little bit, Nubs kind of has a better numbers advantage than they may have before. This was just so many commandos. The 2 helicopters are going to have a tough time dealing with it. They might not even be able to see everything, and they can't. You can see that Blue's vision doesn't include that 1 commando. And that's the strength of the commandos. Poor Sam's getting dangerously close to this helicopter. And they do take it out. Dark Templar's winning in the bottom here. Still winning. This is great. I think, I don't actually know what I think. This is well played. I'm trying to think of what Nubs could have done differently. It kind of caught me off guard how much Red ended up getting over time, and I think it's really all these barracks built in the top. Just launched Dark Templar into a way better macro situation. The airport is one of the only things I think keeping Nubs in the game here. I mean, this has been super clutch. But besides this location, there's not really many spots that Nubs is actually capping. And that's 608 economy. Dark Templar almost has twice that by this point. This is a new front opening up. And this is also very scary. Over time, this is going to be another strong army that can push in from the north for Red. Flower of Sams heading over to the mountain range. I used to call them dots of Sams, and I saw in a replay that Infenzia called them a flower of Sams, which sounds infinitely cooler. Dark Templar's just walking these things in one by one, but I think they can almost afford to do that at this point. Yeah, pushing through this mountain range for both players is always just going to be bad trades. Like, it favors the defenders so much. 1 Sam already here. This is great. If these commandos could snipe reinforcements that are trickling in, pardon me. Nubs is doing a great job to move over to this side to defend this, but it's going to be so many units for Red. With this, I mean, I don't know, this is going to be interesting. It's going to stall these blue artillery for so long, even just as they attack all these dug-in units. But in the meantime, this push from Dark Templar is a little bit scary. There's some barracks in the off this main fight for Nubs, which are great. But I mean, this commandos could even snipe that depot if it wanted to. It's very hard for nubs to use these planes over here because there's just the perfect amount of SAMs. The tanks are on top of the SAMs. That could be big if nubs could take out those SAMs on here, but I mean, there's still more SAMs getting made. It's just an eco game at this point. Dark Templar is at 1200. Nubs is slowly running out of money. And none of this came into play. I forgot entirely about all those trade routes. So Nubs is going to be able to defend that potentially, but then a second front's going to open up. And this still isn't super handled. I mean, this barracks is now doing what it needs to do, which is cap like the left side and take that income away from Dark Templar. Pretty soon though, Dark Templar is going to be able to send everything forward because there's still units that are going to the north here to cap. But once all this is capped, then all that production can either be turned off and built closer to the front, or just directed towards Nubs' main base. So this side of the map is starting to, I mean, at least all this gas was secured for Nubs, which is huge. We can just go big picture at this point. This northern field is definitely going in Red's favor. Nubs will be able to defend the gas, but it's just, I mean, I don't know how anyone could come back from this point. Yeah, it's a frustrating loss, I think. If you're Nubs. I don't know how Nubs feels, but I would feel that way. It's always tough when you run into like a defensive position in the mountains and then you get a bad trade and then all of a sudden your opponent expanded off their main production. Because now Dark Templar can do this, which is just overwhelmed with numbers. And slowly, this position is going to be surrounded. I mean, this is already capped by Red. Well played. From both players, but yeah, especially DT Assassin, or pardon me, Dark Templar on that defensive play in the mountains. Either way, special thanks to Nubs for submitting this in the match replays section of the Discord. Check out the Discord if you want to learn more about the game, talk to people about the game, ask questions, whatever it is. I hope you enjoy yourself, have a great night, day, evening, whatever it is. Catch you around. Peace.